political climate of medieval England was characterized by a complex interplay of feudal allegiances, aristocratic rivalries, and a monarchy that struggled to maintain control over powerful nobles. This period, particularly during the reign of Edward II, was marked by significant political instability and factional disputes. Understanding this tumultuous environment is crucial to comprehending the mysterious disappearances of Gaveston and Despenser, as it provides the backdrop against which these events unfolded. The political climate of medieval England was defined by the feudal system, where land ownership and military service created a network of obligations and loyalties. The king's authority was often challenged by his own vassals, leading to a delicate balance of power. The significance of this environment is evident in the fates of Piers Gaveston and Hugh Despenser the Younger, two of Edward II's favourites, whose rise to prominence incited the ire of other nobles. Their relationships with the king exemplified the dangerous intertwining of personal and political alliances, eventually contributing to their downfalls. One illustrative example is Gaveston's rapid ascent after Edward II's coronation, where he was granted significant titles and lands, provoking resentment among the nobility. His favoured status led to his repeated exiles, highlighting the thin line between royal favour and noble hostility. In another example, Hugh Despenser the Younger became a central figure in English governance, wielding immense influence over Edward II. His monopolization of power and wealth alienated many nobles, ultimately leading to a baronial uprising and his execution. Both cases demonstrate how the political climate was fraught with personal vendettas and opportunistic power plays. Certain opinions assert that the favoritism shown by Edward II to Gaveston and Despenser eroded the stability of his reign. Critics argue that such favoritism was reckless, as it exacerbated political divisions and weakened the monarchy. However, others contend that the king's reliance on close companions was a necessary counterbalance to the rebellious nobility, despite the inherent risks. This period was not without controversy. The king's favoritism, coupled with his perceived ineffectiveness, fueled dissent and contributed to his eventual deposition. Some historians suggest that Edward's actions were a symptom of broader systemic issues within the feudal structure, rather than isolated failures. This interpretation challenges the view that favoritism alone led to the instability. Ultimately, the political climate of medieval England was a catalyst for significant events, influencing the dynamics between the crown and nobility. It serves as a crucial context for the disappearances of Gaveston and Despenser, illustrating how precarious power politics could have deadly consequences. Their stories underscore the intricate web of loyalty, ambition, and rivalry that defined the era, shaping England's historical trajectory. The rise of Piers Gaveston and Hugh Despenser in Edward II's court is a fascinating chapter in English history, marked by intrigue, favoritism, and eventual downfall. Gaveston and Despenser were the favourites of King Edward II, holding significant influence and power, which they leveraged for their own advancements. Both men hailed from lower nobility, but through their personal relationships with the king, they ascended to unprecedented positions of authority, causing tensions within the English court and nobility. Their prominence is crucial to understanding the mysterious circumstances surrounding their eventual disappearances. Gaveston first became close to Edward when they were young, and upon Edward's accession to the throne, Gaveston was elevated to the earldom of Cornwall, a move that angered the established nobility. Despenser's rise followed Gaveston's death, further inciting nobility resentment. Their influence disrupted traditional power structures, provoking backlash from the barons, who felt excluded and threatened by the favoritism shown to them by the king. Two specific examples illustrate their contentious roles: the frequent political squabbles Gaveston ignited, including being banished multiple times only to return defiantly each time, and Despenser's alleged malpractices and ruthless acquisition of lands, which led to the Despenser War. Their actions and positions sparked significant political unrest and were pivotal to the civil discord that emerged during Edward II's reign. Historical perspectives often paint Gaveston and Despenser as manipulative and power-hungry, exploiting their royal connections for personal gain, a view supported by contemporary chroniclers who described them as catalysts for the kingdom's upheavals. However, some modern historians argue that their rise was not solely due to underhanded ambitions, but also Edward II's desperate need for loyal allies amidst his strained relations with the nobility. The rise of Gaveston and Despenser inevitably led to numerous challenges, including a fragmented court and simmering tensions. Their favoritism also sparked a larger discussion on the governance of the kingdom and nobility's role, which ultimately contributed to Edward II's deposition. There is debate about whether their influence was symptomatic of royal favoritism or indicative of deeper systemic challenges within medieval monarchy governance. Their influence and subsequent disappearances don't just highlight the instability of Edward's reign, but also shed light on the precarious nature of political favor and the volatility of courtly life, leaving a narrative that continues to intrigue historians and audiences alike. The complex dynamics of their rise provide crucial insights into the broader narrative of power, loyalty, and rebellion, central to understanding the era's political landscape. Political alliances and enmities among the nobility during the time of Gaveston and Despenser were critical forces shaping the landscape of medieval England. These alliances were complex networks of loyalty and rivalry among the aristocracy, often determining the fate of key players at court. The disappearance of figures like Piers Gaveston and Hugh Despenser cannot be fully understood without considering these intricate noble relationships. In the case of Gaveston, a close companion to King Edward II, his elevation to a position of power threatened established noble families, leading to political backlash. His favor with the king was perceived as an affront to the traditional power dynamics, creating enmity with influential barons like Thomas, Earl of Lancaster. This tension culminated in Gaveston's capture and eventual execution, highlighting how noble alliances dictated life and death politics in the era. Similarly, Hugh Despenser the Younger, another favorite of Edward II, expanded his power by exploiting his connection to the king, aggravating the nobility. His growing influence and accumulation of wealth led to significant opposition from noble families, who saw him as a usurper to their historic privileges. His downfall, like Gaveston's, was the result of noble alliances opposing his unchecked influence, resulting in his trial and execution. Opinions from this time, such as those chronicled by medieval writers like the Monk of Malmesbury, illustrate how these political alliances were viewed as a legitimate means to maintain checks on royal favoritism and uphold noble prerogatives. Conversely, supporters of Gaveston and Despenser might argue that these alliances merely masked personal vendettas and ambitions cloaked in the guise of political interest. However, challenges and controversies arise from this dynamic. The reliance on alliances meant that personal grievances and rivalries often overshadowed national interests or effective governance. The nobility's role in the downfall of Gaveston and Despenser underscores the flip side of these alliances. They could destabilize the realm and precipitate civil unrest, as seen during the tumultuous period leading to the deposition of Edward II. These political maneuvers, while ostensibly aimed at maintaining balance, had broader implications, influencing everything from royal policy to social stability. The hostile climate, born from these alliances and enmities, perpetuated a culture of fear and instability at the court. These volatile dynamics are essential in understanding the mysterious disappearance of influential figures like Gaveston and Despenser, reflecting the precariousness of power in a world where allegiances could shift rapidly and fatally. The events leading to the disappearances of historical figures like Gaveston and Despenser are crucial to understanding the theme of living in fear. This heading captures the turmoil and conspiracies that can engulf individuals in power, driven by political intrigue, jealousy, and vendettas. The events themselves typically include political machinations, shifting alliances, and acts of betrayal that create an atmosphere ripe for conflict and fear. Understanding these events is essential because they showcase how power dynamics and personal vendettas can endanger those at the center of political storms, leading to their mysterious disappearances. The significance of these events is their power to illuminate the precariousness of political life during medieval times, when allegiances were fragile and fortunes could change dramatically overnight. The disappearances of Piers Gaveston and Hugh Despenser are emblematic of the lethal stakes involved when political ambitions collide with personal loyalties. Their cases exemplify the perils faced by those who dared to wield influence in the court of a monarch like Edward II of England. Real-world examples that illustrate these events include Gaveston's initial rise to power as a favoured companion of Edward II and his eventual downfall, precipitated by the hostility of the nobility. Their disdain for Gaveston, partly due to his low birth and the king's overt favouritism, led to his repeated exiles and eventual execution in 1312. Similarly, Hugh Despenser the Younger, who succeeded Gaveston in the king's affections, faced intense animosity from rival barons. His accumulation of power and land incited numerous baronial revolts, culminating in his execution in 1326. Opinions supporting this concept argue that such events highlight the dangers inherent in unchecked power and favoritism at the upper echelons of society. Critics, however, may contend that Gaveston and Despenser were victims of their own ambition and lack of political prudence. They suggest that these figures' inability to navigate the complex political landscape contributed significantly to their downfalls. Controversy surrounds these events, not least because they challenge the notion of strong, stable medieval governance. The frequent shifts in power and the resulting fear reflect a time when political and personal loyalties were often indistinguishable, leading to violent and mysterious retributions. These events connect to the broader theme by demonstrating how fear permeates political arenas, sometimes making survival dependent on cunning as much as on loyalty or ability, and influencing broader societal dynamics. Understanding these connections helps us comprehend the fragile balance between power, loyalty, and survival in historical contexts.